Will the King take a big risk and meet Prince Harry soon? Would Harry and Meghan's next TV move be a breathtaking betrayal? What's happening with the royals in Scotland, and why could Prince Andrew be in for another transatlantic shock? We have another fascinating show coming up. Hello and welcome to Palace Confidential. I'm Jo Elvin and I have only one guest today, but oh, what a guest. Back especially from a summer break, it's the beloved Rebecca English, Royal Editor of the Daily Mail. Welcome to you. Now, a reminder that if you want more great royal news and views, there are two things you can do. One is to make sure that you subscribe to the Daily Mail's Royals YouTube channel. Click that subscribe button for free to be notified whenever we put out a new show, like the special we did with royal biographer Robert Hardman on Tuesday. That will play straight after this if you missed it. The other thing you need to do is sign up to the Palace Confidential newsletter. That is also free, and it features the likes of Rebecca here writing fascinating things each week. There's a QR code on your screen now which you can scan using your phone's camera. It's that easy. Okay, let's get to it. It's August, and that means one thing: the royal family head north. Rebecca, what can you tell us about it?
Yeah, as I've come back down from the north, they're all heading up. So it's the summer of Balmoral, of course, and all the royal family head up to the royal family's private estate, the monarch's private estate up there in the Scottish Highlands, for lots of fresh air, countryside pursuits, firing up Prince Philip's barbecue. There's horse riding. It's really their happy place. Obviously, the estate was bought back in the late 19th century by Queen Victoria, who then built that wonderful grey-hued kind of fairy book castle up there, and her love for that place has been inherited by generations. You know, I remember Princess Eugenie saying in an interview that it really was her granny's happy place, and now we're seeing a new generation of family enjoying it as well.
And we got a glimpse of Catherine going to church with William, and some people were calling it a bit of a style reinvention, but you're not so sure.
Oh God, this kind of stuff really annoys me. So yeah, the Waleses always go up the August bank holiday weekend, and one of the reasons why they love Balmoral is because actually you can tramp for miles and not be seen by anyone apart from the occasional walker. But you do have to go to church with the monarch on Sundays, and it's that way we got royal fans got a glimpse of the whole Wales family on their way in. And there was a lot of talk about how the princess had changed her hair colour, but as someone, I'll be honest, who spent 3 hours in a hairdresser's chair the other week, women's hair changes over the summer. The sun brings out your natural highlights, it bleaches your hair a bit, and I have to say I think it was also a bit of a trick of the light, so I don't think she's changed her hair colour at all.
I thought it was just the way the sunlight was hitting.
Yeah, it's what I do, but obviously it's summer silly season, so it does spark acres of talk about it, and I suspect a quick trip back to kind of Richard Warder hairdressers and a few low lights, we'll see her looking back to her kind of glossy chestnut vest in the autumn.
I thought maybe she'd taken inspiration from my blonde.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah,
Bronze.
sort of like brown blonde. Yeah.
Yeah. I look. It's a bit of light-hearted fun.
Yeah.
But I always say there was a very well-known Palace press officer who's, my favourite phrase of his was, "I reserve the right to be wrong," which I always rather loved. And I reserve the right to be wrong on this, but I suspect we'll see her looking, as she always does, beautifully coiffured back in the autumn.
Let us see, because there's another, Princess Anne's future daughter-in-law also received an invitation.
Harriet Spurling, yes, who's a paediatric nurse who's working in the NHS and has recently got engaged to Peter Phillips. It was her first invitation up to Balmoral, where she's been seen enjoying electric bike rides apparently with her sister-in-law to be, Zara, and considering how relaxed she was around the family at Royal Ascot in June, I think this will be a breeze for her.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because obviously the Princess of Wales will be an old hand at this now, but people always talk about the so-called Balmoral test, about what it's like to blend in with the family, and there's a lot you'll be expected to do, isn't there? Sort of like joining the outdoorsy stuff, and I keep hearing things like up to 5 outfit changes a day. It's a lot, isn't it?
That's just rubbish again.
Is it?
It's like,
I quite like the idea of 5 outfits a day.
I think if you were going to Sandringham for Christmas, absolutely, it's a bit more of a formal occasion. But the whole point about Balmoral is it's really informal. So I think you'd barely have to do 2 outfit changes a day. Maybe something for breakfast and the day's activities with a change of clothes for dinner. But I have to say, I think Harriet Sperling is a style icon for the royal family in the making, so I would love to see what her Balmoral wardrobe was like.
And what about, where does royal protocol come in all of this? Is there a lot of curtsying that needs to go on? If you're sort of like junior to senior royals, that sort of a thing?
Again, it's really informal, and so I suspect if you are meeting the King or Queen for the first time, there would be a curtsy there, but they really don't expect people to do it each and every time they walk in and out of the room. So I think it would be on first greeting, and then formalities would be out the way. So
it's informal after that formal bit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is the royal family we're talking about, Joe. And they are the King and the Queen. And it's a matter, I think I've said on the programme before, I asked a member of staff once why they always curtsy when their principal, the member of the royal family, walks in a room, and they said, well, that's why we work for them, we respect them, and it's a show of respect. But after that, no, we're not expected to do it. So,
what about Andrew and Fergie? Will they be there?
They have been there, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. Duke and Duchess of York have been there. They've been staying at Craiggowan Lodge, which was a house that actually was really beloved by Queen Elizabeth. Often she would go up to Scotland, to Balmoral, when the castle was still open to the public, and she would stay in Craiggowan Lodge until she was ready and it was clear for her to move into the main building. So they've been staying there, and they've had their children and grandchildren there, but they've kept a remarkably low profile, including not being seen at church with the King and Queen, and I think that is very significant.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I ask because obviously we've discussed Prince Andrew a lot recently, but new reports would seem to be distancing him from some of the worst activities of the late sex offender and his friend Jeffrey Epstein. What can you tell us about that?
Well, Ghislaine Maxwell, who, as we know, was a friend and rumoured girlfriend of Prince Andrew, but obviously was a girlfriend of Jeffrey Epstein, who's serving 20 years in prison for sex trafficking and other crimes in association with Epstein. And she's given an interview to the Department of Justice, which I think is to do with the changing and her incarceration rules. And she has stayed very loyal to Andrew, I have to say, and said that he was nothing to do with any of Epstein's crimes. She's repeated her assertion that the infamous photograph of him with Virginia Giuffre, she's repeated those claims that was a fake. And she has also said that she herself didn't introduce Andrew to Epstein. It was actually the Duchess of York who met Epstein first when she was on holiday in the Bahamas. So she has continued to plough a consistent furrow on that. Whether anyone believes her is another question.
Well, there already has been some scepticism expressed about Ghislaine's account. So do we need to take it with a pinch of salt?
Well, I think she's very much nailed her colours to the mast, and everyone's entitled to a defence. As Andrew, it's the thing we always have to say. He's very strongly denied these allegations against him over the years, and, nothing has ever been proved in a court or any charges levelled against him, criminal ones. So, he's entitled to a defence, but one thing I do know for as much of a fact as I can is that photograph is not faked. We know the circumstances around how it first came into public consciousness. I would be amazed if it's ever proved to be a fake. So I think on that basis alone, we do have to take her testimony with a certain amount of salt. You
touched on Sarah Ferguson's role there in facilitating this relationship between Epstein and Prince Andrew. She doesn't come out as well as she might like in Ghislaine's account, does she?
She doesn't. It strikes me as there's perhaps no love lost there. And obviously coming on the back of Andrew Loney's book, which was pretty excoriating for Sarah as well as Andrew, I don't think it's a particularly comfortable time for her.
Well, speaking of books, there was a report that Virginia Giuffre, who was one of Epstein's victims and who Prince Andrew, as we know, paid a multi-million-pound settlement to, while continuing to deny any wrongdoing, it should be said, apparently she wrote a book before she died.
She did, and I do think this story is one of the reasons why we haven't really seen Andrew pop his head up in the way that he normally would at Balmoral, because it has emerged that she has written a memoir, Nobody's Child, about her life generally and the effect that sex trafficking has had on her, but the publishers do say that it will shed new information on her relationships with Jeffrey Epstein and Prince Andrew. And she obviously, Virginia very sadly took her own life in April. And before she died, she made clear to the person who'd ghostwritten the book for her that she still wanted it to be published regardless of what happened with her own life. So I think even if it doesn't introduce a lot of new ground in terms of allegations she's made against Andrew, it obviously raises what's been very uncomfortable questions for him over the years.
Really going to stoke things up, isn't it? And it just continues to be this narrative that will not go away. So how do you think he's feeling about all of that?
Well, I don't know how he's feeling about it. He obviously has always denied it, but I know for the royal family, this adds to the sense of why the king has done everything he can to try and minimalise Andrew's relationship with his family. I know a lot was made of the king inviting Andrew up to Balmoral over the summer. He's a member of the family. I mean, he could ban him, but then effectively it's a declaration of war. But I think the fact that Andrew has been in Craiggowan Lodge and basically on his own throughout the summer speaks volumes about how the king wants to move forward. And I think it will only emphasise or focus their efforts on trying to get him out of Royal Lodge and minimise any public relationship he has with the family.
Right, well, let's move on and turn to some of your comments now. Now, Linda had this to say about William and Catherine's house move. I think the house the Wales are living in is great. The Prince and Princess are not into grandeur, but what works for their family. While Susan Heflin wrote this about the same subject, I think this house is a good move for Prince William and Princess Catherine as it goes with their rising station in the royal family. Meanwhile, Brian Smythe wrote this email about Royal HQ. Last week, Palace Confidential discussed royal living arrangements. While King Charles and Prince William may not like Buckingham Palace, now while it's being refurbished is the time to make the private apartments comfortable and to their liking. As king and future king, they can't be half in. It is insulting to the people to complain about the burden of living in a palace. If you aren't going to live like a king, then why would taxpayers support keeping ceremonial guards on site and maintain traditions like the state opening of Parliament, trooping the colour at the carriage arrival at Ascot? Interesting. And another unusual suggestion from M, who says maybe young unmarried royals can move into Buckingham Palace if no one else will live there. It could be like a sorority house for young royals. Now, Rebecca, you were away for a lot of this discussion about William and Catherine's house move. It's upset a lot of people. What are your thoughts on this story?
Well, it probably won't surprise people to know I disagree with a lot of what has been said. I think William and Catherine have got to do what's best for their children and for their family, and if that's what they choose to do, then so be it. I actually think the more interesting story is not actually where they choose to live, it's what it means for Buckingham Palace in the future.
I think this is what we were trying to get to the nub of last week in the show, yeah.
Yeah, because it, you know, it is undergoing a massive £360 million refurbishment using taxpayers' money. Now, I wrote a piece about this which made very clear that actually King Charles doesn't live in it at the moment, and while it's always been said it was his intention to live in it once the work had finished, I don't think anyone really believes that. It may be one night a week, but his and Camilla's home is at Clarence House.
And do we know when these refurbishments are projected to be finished?
Two more years. Yeah, it'll be finished within the next 2 years, hopefully on time and on budget, which is what we've been promised. And William's gone further and said he won't ever live at Buckingham Palace as monarch. I mean, he may stay the odd night there. So I do think it's quite important for Buckingham Palace to almost come clean and be a little bit more open on what their plans for that royal residence, which is Monarchy HQ, would be. And if they say, look, we're no longer going to be staying in it, it's not really what we want to do in a modern age, but we want to extend the opening hours to the public, we want to introduce more receptions there, that it could be used for charitable functions, it could be used for government entertaining. I think all of that is great, but I think they just need to be a little bit more open with people and tell people what they're doing.
Because it's a massive amount of money to be spending on it.
It is, and it was much needed. I mean, it's not a kind of vanity project. I mean, as we've spoken about in the programme a lot, the wiring was pre-war, there were bits of masonry falling off, one narrowly missed hitting Princess Anne as she got out of
Wow.
her car. You know, the work was very overdue and very much needed. So they had to kind of bite the bullet and do it in the most time and cost efficient way that they could, which is what they've done over the last 10 years. And I think anyone who really looks into the finances of it will not disagree that the work needed to be done. It's just what it means for the future of Buckingham Palace, I think, that's interesting.
And I think, you know, inevitably there will be critics who say obviously there's structural work that needs to be done, but they're essentially doing up a load of bedrooms with that taxpayers' money that won't really essentially be used.
Well, actually, no, it's a bit of a misnomer to say a lot of bedrooms, because actually there was a small suite of rooms used by Queen Elizabeth, and towards the latter years of her reign, she still stayed in them maybe 2 or 3 days a week, and they would have extended long weekends at Windsor or at Sandringham. But my understanding is they weren't huge or lavish by any stretch of the imagination. Those rooms are part of the last stage of the refurbishment, so they are being refurbished with the expectation that they will be lived in at some point. And I think that's just what we need, a little bit of clarity from the kind of wider institution about.
Slightly to the side of the point, but is there any money being earmarked for the refurbishment of the Royal Swimming Pool? Do you have any idea?
Good question, and actually, honestly, our answer is I don't know. I mean, it's not used that much. It's used obviously by some family members. And
I'm just
some
obsessed
staff,
since I heard this podcast where they said there's literally no information. You can't see pictures of the Royal Swimming Pool.
Well, you can see it as you walk past it in the gardens. You can see the building it's housed in, but you can't actually see in it. And I've never seen in it. So, you know, and I've been doing this job 20 odd years. But I don't think that's a major part of the refurbishment, no. It's the actual kind of hub of the building that's being done. And when you go into the palace, I mean, which is like a kind of rabbit warren, I mean, you go through the side entrance, you know, as I go with the staff and other journalists, and I mean, there literally is scaffolding up everywhere, you know, sheets of plastic hiving off bits of it, you're stepping over kind of missing floorboards.
So
I mean,
regal.
it's an absolute hive of activity because they're so determined to get it in on time and on budget.
Interesting. Well, it's fascinating. I'm sure we'll follow that as it does get completed. Now, here's a nice story from Catherine Ward, who says, I wrote this comment once before. Here's hoping it's read out. My husband and I attended the Queen's plate race in Toronto in July of 2010. Her Majesty was there to present the cup. The jockey who won was interviewed, and his excitement at meeting the Queen completely overtook his win. I'm going to meet the Queen. When he was presented to Her Majesty, he made a wonderful sweeping bow from the waist, a really class act. Well, we must have missed it the first time round, so I'm very glad you reposted, and it's been lovely to read that out. That's a great story. Now, Prince Harry laying his own wreath for VJ Day did not go down well in the comments. Claire Fry had this to say: Australians whose fathers, grandfathers and great-grandfathers fought the Japanese in the Pacific took great exception to Harry's PR stunt. Revolting in the extreme. Charles needs to do something before there is no monarchy left. Strong words indeed. Speaking of King Charles, Iris Waterford wrote after watching our special with Robert Hardman, talking about his updated biography of the monarch, and a reminder that show will play next if you missed it. This was a pleasure to listen to. Talking about the King and Queen, Buckingham Palace, etc. was informative. It brings a better understanding of the work that's involved. Thank you from Adelaide, Australia. Well, thank you. Please do keep those comments coming in, and little tip, if you keep them civil, you might find yours read out. Just saying. Right, now back to our discussion. Series 2 of the reality show With Love, Meghan landed on Netflix this Tuesday. The 8-part series saw the Duchess using ready-made pastry to recreate McDonald's apple pies, revealing how to open a packet of icing sugar without any spillage, and explaining how to pack a suitcase. I thought she had staff for that. Anyway, Rebecca, this seems like more of the same from the first series. Have you watched it?
So, full disclosure, I am actually officially on holiday at the moment.
This is what a soldier she is. She's here for you.
Dipped in and out, so I haven't watched every episode from start to finish, but I think I've seen all I need to see.
Okay.
And it is more of the same, unsurprisingly, because it was actually filmed at the same time as the first series. They just decided to make 2 series out of it. I assume because it was the easier way to do it and more cost effective. And, you know, it does seem to me like they've given it a little tweak since the first one, maybe taking in to account some of the criticisms. You know, we don't see any pretzels transferred from one plastic bag to another. But do not start me on that pastry, Jo.
Why?
I mean, just...
That was like the least offensive thing to me.
I had steam coming out my ear. I think it was just this whole idea of, she said, I am going to reinvent baking. So it's...
Even though she doesn't also like baking.
Yes, exactly. So it's less serious and more playful. And I've got this revolutionary thing in my freezer, not in my freezer, that's not in my house.
In the pretend freezer. Yeah.
And it's called puff pastry. And I was like, does not every person have frozen puff pastry in their house? It was like, this is not reinventing the wheel, love. So yeah, it just, I'll be honest, it just doesn't appeal to me as a viewer. So I'm probably the wrong target audience for this. I do not have time to kind of wrap friends' presents in, spare pieces of fabric or make, tie-dye scarves or potato print children's apron.
Well,
I'm so sorry.
Some people are just more dedicated to elevating their everyday life,
Oh,
Rebecca.
Elevating, that's another word. Don't mention it, Jo.
You're not the only one because, we have seen a lot more scathing reviews as per Series 1, haven't we?
I think the reviews have been slightly less scathing than the first one, but I think that's because the shock value has slightly worn off and there's just a lot of eye rolling that, I've seen her described as the kind of Marie Antoinette of Montecito. And it does have a flavour of it, but I think it was even something that popped up on my feed this morning from the Hollywood Reporter, and I think that's the kind of industry publication that they will want to curry favour with. They don't really care about us in the UK and what we have to say about it, but they do care about publications like that. And effectively the review says, I just don't know why they bothered with a second series.
It's funny, isn't it?
That will be very, very disappointing to them.
I think the people I've spoken to who do like it just find it inoffensive and quite relaxing is the word that I keep hearing. But
I can see that. I mean, it's the kind of thing you could have on in the background while you're doing something. But is that really worth a multi-million-dollar deal? I'm not sure it is.
I really want a McDonald's apple pie now, though, I have to tell you. But no sign of Harry here. We did sort of get a few glimpses in the first series, didn't we? But we did get a couple of personal insights into their relationship, i.e. who said I love you first. It's quite personal, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, look, we might not have seen Harry, apart from I think he flashes up in certainly one of the bits I've seen in a photograph of their, first kind of big date in Botswana. But we hear a lot about him. For someone who's, conspicuous by his absence, she kind of shoehorns him into every kind of flower-sprinkled mention that she can. Him and the children, I have to say, and it's that constant reminder of who she's married to. Yes, there are some sweet anecdotes, but said in a kind of very self-consciously, self-deprecating way, that he was the first person to say, I love you, and she kind of rolls her eyes and goes, of course he was. And the bit that slightly jarred with me is this kind of lesson she does about packing a bag. Stop the press, you put the heaviest things like shoes in the bottom. Thankfully, that's something I never knew about. But she packs a baseball cap and says, I like to go casual. And she said, oh, look, the baseball cap I happen to have in my hand is the one I had made for my husband and his friends to celebrate his 40th birthday. And it says PH 40 on it. Like, again, the constant reminder of his royal role.
Yeah.
If you were doing something for your partner, you wouldn't put PH Prince Harry on it. You just put Harry or Has or H, as we know she calls him. It's little things like that I find quite jarring, I have to say. And
what role, if any, have the children got in this series?
Well, again, the mentions of him of them are many. Now, actually, as a parent, I understand that. Your kids are a huge part of your life, and I often find myself dropping them into conversations with friends or colleagues. But it does happen a lot in this, that her children are the kindest, sweetest ever. I mean, we all think our kids are great, but would I describe them as the kindest, sweetest in the world? I'm not sure I always would.
Maybe when they were that little, but then of course they become teenagers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And a lot of, at one point she's making aprons for them, and she makes one for each of the children, for Archie and Lilibet. But there are a lot of references to them in it, and what they eat and what they like and what they don't like.
Here's an interesting thing though. Meghan also revealed what she missed most about the UK. I wouldn't have thought there was anything. Was it our tropical weather?
Well, I've just been in North Wales for a few days and the weather was glorious. So, well done, Wales.
Yeah.
No, and actually this was a bit of a surprise, that the revelation that she did have some fond memories of the UK, but that was British radio stations, particularly Magic FM, which is... it was described in the programme as a granny station. It's definitely kind of very soft rock, middle of the road.
They like an 80s moment.
Yeah.
And I'm not mad about that.
No, I have to say, and it's very soft and power
Yeah.
ballads and things like that. Not my cup of tea. So that I have to say was a surprising revelation.
Indeed. And as part of the promotion of this new series, Meghan appeared on a series called The Circuit with Emily Chang. What did you make of that?
This was actually far more interesting than the entire 8 or 10 episodes of the series or whatever it was, I have to say, because it was a soft interview, but there was some interesting questions asked, and I think her answers were well thought out, and there was a definite few digs at the royal family in them.
Well, indeed, there's this thing about the tights coming up again. It's just never going to go away. It's like it seemed to be, some people are interpreting as a slight against the royal family when she talks about what she has against pantyhose. You and I both hate that word, but that's,
Yeah, I think it's what they use in America. We used to say the word tights here. Yes, she said that having to wear these pantyhose was inauthentic for her as a person, and it was all tied up with the time in her life. She didn't mention the royal family by name, but it was quite clear what she was referring to, where she wasn't able to be as vocal as she wanted to be, and was not able to use her voice properly, that she felt that she was an inauthentic version of herself. And understandably, this has sparked quite a lot of debate about whether women in the royal family are expected to wear tights, whether they didn't have to wear tights. Like anything, I think it was quite a deliberate statement on her behalf. And yet another little dig, again, I just don't think she needs to make.
But you were saying something to me earlier as well, that it was interesting when she was talking about what she wears when she was packing her suitcase.
Oh yeah, so in the suitcase packing episode, she said, she's someone who always wears monochrome because it's the easiest way to dress, and yet she made a huge deal that, again, one of the constricting things about the royal family, she wasn't able to wear the bright colours that she normally favoured. So again, there's so much inconsistency there that doesn't quite make sense, and is a very revisionist version, I think, of what she experienced. As always, we say recollections may vary, and I think again on this they do as well.
And she talks a lot, and we've heard her say many times that she couldn't be vocal when she was in the royal family, but I don't want to be mean, but what is she saying now?
Well, again, this interviewer asked her this very question and said, well, what is it that you would like to say? Because in 2016, I think it was, you were very vocal about Donald Trump and what you thought about him. I think she described him as a misogynist. And she immediately backpedaled away from the question and said, well, that was then, I'm a different person now, and I don't actually think I've got anything I want to say. That I do not believe. I want to say, but I just value the opportunity to say it if I wanted to, unlike that constricting time in my life when I was a member of the royal family. But I have to say, I thought she pushed a lot of boundaries when she was a member of the royal family in, the editing of Vogue, and the creation of her cookbook, and, talking about how she wanted to do work on women's rights. Yeah. So when we work for big organisations, we don't tend to proffer our personal opinions quite a lot, and that's just part and parcel of working for a company, whether it's a firm or the firm. So I've never really quite bought into that argument of hers.
Well, you've written about this in the Palace Confidential newsletter this week, haven't you?
I have. I was asked to give a few, of my initial takeaways from the series, and my initial one was how Harry, is shoehorned in at every opportunity despite him not being there. I cover the issue about the tights, which I have to say, I don't think there's ever been a written rule on wearing tights or pantyhose as a member of the royal family. What I do think, though, is at the time that Meghan was in the family, we had Queen Elizabeth, who was a woman of her generation, who would wear tights, both on formal engagements, along with hats and gloves. And actually, I've seen many pictures of her and footage of her wearing tights, even privately, even up at Balmoral. She would wear, thick tights with her kilt and her jumper. And I think female members of the royal family would tend to take their lead from her as a matter of respect for her as someone who was doing that job and had been doing it brilliantly for a very long time. And this is the way that she felt comfortable portraying herself in public. So I think women often took, in formal settings, their cue from the Queen. But it wasn't a hard and fast rule, and would they have grumbled if she hadn't? I don't think she would have.
And what was this you've written about with the Palace Insider giving it a yawn emoji? What's this?
Well, I think this is interesting, and I think it's an example of the state of affairs at the moment. I think a lot of people would love to think, even with the digs about the tights and inauthenticity and not being able to use her voice, that there would be outrage about it. There is not. In fact, I would say it's the opposite. It's almost indifference. It's so inoffensive, to be honest, compared to some of the really designed to wound barbs that her and Harry have made about the royal family in recent years, that no one is really saying anything. And this definitely didn't come from Buckingham Palace, but it came from someone within royal circles who's very well plumbed in. And when I said, "What do you think?" I literally just got a yawn emoji.
Oh my God.
Which I think says probably all you need to know.
Well, indeed. And just a reminder that you can sign up for that newsletter for free by scanning the QR code that's on screen now with the camera on your phone. Very much worth it. Now, Rebecca, more on the Sussexes. It's been confirmed that Prince Harry will return to the UK in September. Tell us about this.
Yeah, I had a press release about it this morning from Wellchild, which is a wonderful charity that helps the families of children who have terminal and life-limiting illnesses. And he's been patron of it for many years now, I think a couple of decades. And kept that patronage even after he left royal duties, and he tends to come over every year for it, even while he's been in America, and it's been confirmed that he will do. The award ceremony's on September the 8th. I mean, I don't know, because I don't talk to him or his people really, what his plans are around that. I suspect he will use the chance to visit other charities and organisations, but of course it will inevitably spark a lot of speculation as to what he has to do with his family members.
Indeed, and in particular whether or not he will meet King Charles for what would be the first time in, it must be around 18 months.
It is, yeah. I mean, he hasn't seen his father since he flew over when it was announced that the King was diagnosed with cancer at the start of last year. And viewers will probably remember the King had asked him not to, not least because he was so worried about the risk of Harry bringing in some kind of infection while he was in the really early stages of his treatment. But Harry did, but it was a very short meeting, and the King immediately left for Sandringham. And Harry himself told us in April of this year, when he gave that, pretty bitter BBC interview, that his father just doesn't talk to him anymore. And the reason why is because it is a real risk for the King to do so. Harry has made clear he's willing to publicly disseminate to chosen media outlets private family conversations. Now, I think we're in a slightly different era now that his court case against the Home Office has been concluded to his detriment. He was very angry and he made all sorts of allegations around that. But I think since then we have seen a slightly uneasy peace between the two camps. So I think there is more of a chance that he could see his father on this trip than he has done in recent months. The King is ostensibly based in Scotland at the moment, at Balmoral, and he will be till the state visit of President Trump in mid-September, but he is coming down regularly for cancer treatment and also for a number of forthcoming engagements he's got coming up in various parts of the country. So it is plausible, but the royal family have to consider whether this is a risk that he wants to take.
And the King will, it's fresh in our minds, that really angry BBC interview. It'll definitely be forefront of the King's mind, won't it? Whether or not he wants to be in the same room with that temper.
Yes, I mean, the trouble is, Harry in the same breath said, I want reconciliation with my family, while once again absolutely sticking the knife in and even questioning how long his father had to live, which I know really, really upset many family members, because it was considered such poor taste to publicly enunciate. So I think they will be wary. I wrote 2 years ago that the King had, although it pained him, he had parked the Harry problem to one side, at least until this Home Office court case was concluded.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, that was true, because we have seen that happen. Whether he might start to relent a little bit, it's very, very possible. But what I think they would want to do is have it on comfortable ground for the King, where he could keep the meeting, quite frankly, as long or as short as he wanted to. Harry could go up to Balmoral to see him, but that would involve him having a stay of 1 or 2 days on the royal estate. And I don't think that they would want that. I think they would want it on more neutral ground.
Well, also, obviously, because he was not successful with his wanting to have police protection, will we have this same ludicrous situation where he claims it's actually not safe for him to stay in royal residences?
Well, he claimed that he thought staying at Buckingham Palace, which was the residence they offered him at the time, would put a target on his back, one of the most highly protected buildings in the country. He can't stay at Buckingham Palace. No one's staying at Buckingham Palace at the moment, because the works that we've discussed have reached a stage that no one can live there. Not members of the royal family at the moment. I mean, some staff are there and the offices are there, but those kind of private residential places are not in operation. So the only other option would be him to maybe stay at somewhere like Kensington Palace or St James's Palace, Clarence House potentially, if the King's not staying there, but I can't see the King wanting to let him have full reign of his private home when he's not there. So I think it's more likely Harry will stay in a hotel this time. Will he be given police protection? Well, he's going to be offered the same protection he was offered at the start of that whole ludicrously long and expensive court proceedings, which cost him a lot of money and cost the British taxpayers a lot of money, which came to the same conclusion, that as long as he gave 28 days notice, he would get a bespoke package, which is when he's in a more public setting. So maybe when he leaves the airport, he might get official police escort. If he's arriving to a public event like Wellchild, he would get a police escort. But if he chooses to go out and have dinner with a friend privately, then he probably wouldn't. And that is what he will, I'm pretty sure, will be offered on this occasion as well.
The other Sussex story that emerged this week that I wanted to ask you about was that Harry and Meghan's production company were potentially planning a documentary about Princess Diana.
That is the claim that's been made, that Archewell want to bring out a documentary about her in 2027, which will be the 30th anniversary of her tragic death.
Gosh.
Now, interestingly, there's been no comment on this from Archewell or the Sussexes. So it's not a no.
Right.
And often if you have a no comment, that means there is some truth in it. Whether they go ahead with it is another matter, because of course that really would set the cat amongst the pigeons.
I mean, obviously a lot of people will say let her rest in peace, for one thing, and then we've seen a lot of last straws with the relationship with William, but surely this would be devastating in terms of their relationship.
And I have to say, I have a great deal of sympathy with the whole let her rest in peace school of thought. I mean, look, no one brother has ownership of their mother's memory. They both have to remember and honour their mother in the way they see fit. And obviously William and Harry did cooperate together a number of years ago on their one and only joint documentary on her, because they made the point that as they were very young when she died and have never really been able to talk about it, and they wanted to do it kind of once and once only, and then be able to not close that chapter, because she's always present in their lives, but say, look, we've said what we need to have said, let her rest in peace and let's move on. So I think for Harry to then bring out a documentary that he would personally profit from commercially, even if he said, look, I'm going to give all the profits of this to charity, there would be some quid pro quo in it for Archewell in terms of making the programme and getting their names out there. I think William would definitely see that as the last straw.
But also, it seems what you're saying about, no one son has the monopoly over their mother's memory, but it seems almost completely unlikely that William would cooperate in any way with such a venture.
I would find it astonishing if he did.
Yeah.
It's sometimes it's difficult to stick your neck out in this job because you never know which way the twists and turns of covering the royal family will take you. But I think that's one thing we can be very certain. William adored his mother. And also feels very protective over her. It's why he was so vociferous in the action he took against Martin Bashir and Panorama. Again, not something he wanted to do, but he believed very strongly that his mother had been manipulated and let down. So he's not against speaking out on her behalf if he needs to, but otherwise he wants to be able to remember her in his own way, introduce her into his children's lives, and then, enjoy those very special memories of the grandmother they never got to meet, who would have been a brilliant grandmother, I'm sure. And I think to see Harry commercialise that would be a breathtaking betrayal for him. But of course we don't know whether Harry's going to do that.
Yeah.
It's been spoken about, it's not been denied. It could be one of these things that's come up in a brainstorming meeting. I think it would be a very, very foolish thing for Harry to do. But who knows?
Well, hear that. That's right, it is time to celebrate our unsung royal hero of the week. And this week, it's a birthday boy. Rebecca, it's someone we've discussed before, but worth celebrating again.
I always think he's worth celebrating, actually. The Duke of Gloucester, who turns 81. Happy birthday.
81 years young.
Yeah, and who still conducts several hundred engagements on behalf of the royal family, as does his wife, the Duchess of Gloucester, with very, very little fanfare every year. And it's worth looking back, if you're interested in this, on a big profile I did for him for his 80th birthday last year. I spoke to a lot of family and friends. I had some exclusive photographs of him over the years to really kind of shine a light, because he was, as I described at the time, the spare of the day. He never was intended to be a working member of the royal family. He was an architect. He was very respectful of his position. He was born fifth in line to the throne, which is what Harry is now, but had always had a different route. But obviously his elder brother was tragically killed in a plane crash, and he suddenly had to step up the plate, and has done magnificently without putting a foot wrong his entire life. So I think he's a genuine unsung hero of the royal family.
How many engagements a year?
Oh, it's several hundred. I think 200, 230. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's, at 81, and does it with no fuss.
That's a big chunk of the year.
No publicity, no fanfare. And people say he's absolutely brilliant. Again, very much in the Princess Anne school of royal duties. He does his homework. He really gets involved. He's very passionate about the charities he works with. In fact, the King, as a birthday present last year, handed down his patronage of REBA, which is the Association of Architects, in gratitude for the life he could have had. Aww. And the passion he's shown still for the things that excite him throughout his royal career. So he's generally one of life's good eggs.
Love that. Well, very happy birthday to the Duke of Gloucester. Right, well, with the Windsors off on their annual summer break in Balmoral, we thought we'd look back to a few of our favourite pictures from there over the years. Some great pictures there. What a beautiful spot it is up in Scotland. A reminder that Robert Hardman is up next, talking about his updated biography of King Charles. It's a fascinating watch, and you can click here to see that. Just time to say thanks to the one, the only Rebecca English, and to you for watching. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.